Abraham died owning wells, livestock, land, treaties, and enough wealth to negotiate with kings. But he started as a migrant with no inheritance, no territory, and no guarantees. The gap between those two realities wasn't miracles. It was a series of calculated decisions most people would never make because they prioritize comfort over compound growth. What he understood about wealth accumulation is still working today, but most believers never study him as an economist. Here's the part nobody talks about. Abraham's wealth wasn't accidental, and it wasn't just blessed into existence. There's a financial architecture underneath the narrative that connects directly to how generational wealth still gets built in the modern world. You're trying to build something that lasts, but the system feels rigged against you. Rent increases faster than your salary. Groceries cost more every month. You're told to invest, but the market feels like a casino you don't understand. Retirement accounts exist somewhere in the back of your mind as something you'll deal with later when life calms down, which it never does. You're not reckless. You work hard. You pay your bills. But there's no margin. No room to breathe. One emergency away from crisis. You see people around you building wealth, buying property, traveling freely, and you can't figure out what they know that you don't. The advice you get is either too complex to implement or too simplistic to matter. Save more. Spend less. Invest wisely. None of it addresses the real problem. You feel stuck between two voices. One tells you to have faith and trust God with your finances, which sounds spiritual, but doesn't help you build a budget. The other tells you to maximize earnings and optimize investments, which sounds smart, but feels completely detached from any sense of purpose or stewardship. You want both. You want financial stability that's also spiritually grounded. You want to build wealth without losing your integrity. And you're tired of pretending those two things are incompatible. The truth is, they're not. But understanding how they work together requires looking at people who actually did it. And Abraham is one of the clearest examples in history of someone who built lasting wealth while maintaining a relationship with God. Not through spiritual shortcuts, through structural discipline. Abraham's story is famous for faith, but it's also a masterclass in asset accumulation and risk-adjusted decision-making. When God told him to leave his homeland, Abraham didn't just pack a bag and wander aimlessly. He migrated with a plan. He brought his household, his servants, his livestock, and his nephew Lot. This wasn't a spontaneous leap of faith. This was a calculated relocation of resources. When he arrived in Canaan, he didn't settle immediately. He moved strategically through the land, setting up altars and staking symbolic claims to territory. He observed the region. He identified resources. He built relationships with local rulers. And when famine hit, he didn't stay and suffer spiritually. He relocated to Egypt, preserved his wealth, and returned when conditions improved. That's not just faith. That's economic mobility. Then comes the separation from Lot. Their combined wealth had grown so large that the land couldn't support both herds. Most people read this as a family dispute. But financially, it's a lesson in asset allocation and risk distribution. Lot chose the well-watered plains near Sodom. Immediate gratification, visible prosperity, short-term optimization. Abraham took the hill country. Long-term value, sustainable growth, less competition for resources. Pause for a second. Who are you optimizing for right now? Short-term visibility or long-term stability? Lot's choice looked better initially. But Sodom collapsed. Abraham's position endured. The hill country gave him defensive advantage, water rights, grazing land, and negotiating power with surrounding nations. His wealth wasn't just about having more livestock. It was about controlling strategic resources that compounded over time. Later, when Lot was captured in a regional war, Abraham didn't just pray about it. He mobilized a private military force of over 300 trained men born in his household. That means he had the infrastructure, the resources, and the organizational capacity to fund and deploy an armed rescue operation. That's not subsistence living. That's institutional wealth. After the rescue, the king of Sodom offered Abraham all the recovered goods as payment. Abraham refused. He didn't want anyone to say they made him rich. He protected his reputation and maintained his independence. That's wealth psychology. He understood that perceived dependence destroys negotiating leverage. He was already wealthy enough that he didn't need the short-term gain. He could afford to optimize for long-term positioning. By the end of his life, Abraham owned land, wells, livestock, treaties with surrounding kings, and a household large enough to function as a small nation. His wealth was transferable. His son Isaac inherited it. Isaac's son Jacob inherited it. The compounding didn't stop with Abraham. It continued generationally because he built systems, not just balances. Most people think Abraham's wealth was a divine reward for obedience. But the text shows something different. God didn't drop wealth into Abraham's lap. God gave him access to a land with resources, and Abraham systematically acquired them. He made decisions. He took calculated risks. He refused bad deals. He diversified his assets. He planned for succession. Here's the shift. Faith didn't replace strategy. Faith informed strategy. Abraham trusted God's long-term promise, which gave him the confidence to make short-term sacrifices. He could turn down the king of Sodom's offer because he believed greater wealth was coming. He could let Lot choose first because he wasn't optimizing for immediate visibility. He could migrate during famine because he wasn't emotionally attached to one location. You've been taught that faith and financial planning are separate categories. Abraham's life shows they're integrated. Faith provides the framework. Planning provides the execution. One without the other is incomplete. Faith without strategy is presumption. Strategy without faith is anxiety. Abraham had both. Abraham's wealth model translates directly into modern financial principles that still build generational stability. First, strategic mobility. Abraham moved when conditions changed. He didn't stay in famine out of stubbornness or spiritual pride. In modern terms, this is career flexibility and geographic mobility. If your city has no economic opportunity, you relocate. If your industry is dying, you retrain. Loyalty to a location or a job that's draining you financially isn't faithfulness. It's inertia. Second, asset diversification. Abraham didn't put all his resources in one category. He had livestock, land, water rights, servants, and political alliances. Modern equivalent, you don't just save cash. You build a diversified portfolio. Retirement accounts, index funds, real estate, skills, relationships, and systems. One income stream is fragile. Multiple streams create stability. Third, long-term positioning over short-term optics. Lot optimized for what looked good immediately. Abraham optimized for what would last. This is the difference between spending to appear wealthy and actually building wealth. It's the difference between financing a luxury car to impress people and driving a used car while investing the difference. Abraham understood that real wealth is invisible until it's unshakable. Fourth, reputation management and independence. Abraham refused wealth that came with strings attached. He understood that financial dependence creates leverage for others to control you. Modern translation: avoid debt that doesn't build assets. Don't take money from people who will use it to manipulate you. Protect your financial independence because it protects your decision-making freedom. Fifth, succession planning. Abraham's wealth didn't die with him. He structured it to transfer. He set up Isaac. He made provisions for his other children. He documented his land purchase publicly, so there was legal clarity. Modern equivalent, estate planning, teaching your kids financial literacy, setting up trusts, creating systems your family can maintain without you. Sixth, the refusal to stay in scarcity. When famine hit, Abraham left. He didn't spiritualize suffering. He moved toward resources. This isn't about running from hard seasons. It's about not being passive when you have options. If your job underpays you and you have marketable skills, you negotiate or leave. If your expenses are suffocating you and you can relocate to a lower cost area, you move. Faithfulness doesn't mean accepting preventable financial pain. Action 1. Build your mobility fund. open a separate savings account labeled Mobility Capital. This isn't your emergency fund. This is your opportunity fund. The money that lets you relocate for a better job, retrain for a new industry, or invest when an asset is undervalued. Start with $1,000, then build toward 3 months of expenses. Abraham could move during famine because he had resources to move with. You need the same capacity. Automate small contributions, even $50 per paycheck. The goal isn't speed. The goal is optionality. Action 2. Diversify your income foundation. Identify one additional income stream you can build over the next 12 months. Not a side hustle that burns you out. A scalable system. This could be learning a high-income skill, starting a small freelance service, creating a digital product, or investing in dividend-producing assets. Abraham didn't rely on one herd. He had multiple flocks, multiple servants, multiple resources. Your financial stability can't rest entirely on one employer. Build redundancy into your income structure. Action 3. Audit your dependencies. Write down every financial obligation you have that gives someone else control over your decisions. Credit card debt, car loans, personal loans from family, subscriptions you can't afford to cancel because you're locked in. Then create a 12-month elimination plan. Pay off the smallest debt first, then redirect that payment to the next one. Abraham refused wealth with strings attached because he understood that financial freedom requires independence. You can't build long-term wealth while trapped in short-term dependencies. Wealth isn't about the size of your account. It's about the quality of your decisions when no one's watching. Abraham became wealthy because he made choices that compounded over decades. He delayed gratification. He refused bad deals. He stayed mobile. He diversified. He planned beyond his lifetime. None of that is flashy. None of that makes good social media content. But all of it builds the kind of stability that survives economic shifts, personal crises, and generational transitions. Imagine what changes in your family line if you become the first one who thinks generationally. You're not just building a portfolio. You're building a character that can be trusted with increase. Every time you automate a transfer into savings, you're becoming someone who prioritizes future security over present comfort. Every time you turn down a purchase you can't afford, you're becoming someone who controls their impulses instead of being controlled by them. Every time you invest in an asset instead of a liability, you're becoming someone who thinks generationally. God doesn't bless chaos. He multiplies order. Abraham's wealth wasn't random. It was the inevitable result of disciplined patterns sustained over time. The same patterns still work. The question is whether you'll apply them. If this resonates, if you're ready to stop waiting for financial breakthroughs and start building financial systems, subscribe to this channel. This isn't about hype. It's not about promising you wealth in 90 days. It's about becoming the kind of person who can steward resources wisely, think long-term, and build something that lasts beyond you. Every video here is designed to help you see the financial architecture underneath biblical narratives. To show you that faith and strategy aren't opposites. To give you practical tools rooted in ancient wisdom. You're not just learning principles, you're joining a community of people who believe God honors discipline and that wealth is built through alignment, not accidents. Hit subscribe. Let's build together.